Today, I'm going to be reviewing another unique lens made by Sigma. This is the brand new Sigma 200mm f2 DG sports lens. Now this lens was released in August of 2025, though just a couple of months ago, and it was released alongside another unique Sigma lens. That was the 12mm f1.4. If you're interested in that lens, I've already made a review, so I'll make sure to place the link in the description. Now, by all means, this is not the first 200mm prime lens ever made. Both Canon and Nikon have made 200mm prime lenses in the past. In fact, Canon have made a 200mm f2 and a 200mm f1.8, although that was a very long time ago, and those lenses were designed for DSLR cameras. So this is the first 200mm prime lens to work on modern mirrorless cameras. The question is, do you really need a 200mm prime lens? Most professionals will probably go for the more versatile 70 to 200mm, which is what I want to try and answer in this review. Now, if we have a look at price, it's a pretty slam dunk answer. A Sigma 70 to 200mm f2.8 comes in around £1,500, which is a pretty good price for a premium 70 to 200mm. Whereas this lens here is significantly more, around double the price, coming in at just under £3,000. So what do you get for the extra price, and is it really worth a spot in your camera bag? Well, I guess there's only one way to find that out. And I'm gonna start right now. So this lens is made of a full metal construction with a metal lens mount. It also comes with some of the best weather sealing money can buy, as this is part of Sigma's sports series. So it's designed to work in the most rugged conditions for sports and wildlife photographers. As you can see, it does have a weather sealing gasket at the rear of the lens. Now, because this is a modern mirrorless lens, it's designed to work on a variety of camera mounts. Currently, it comes in Leica L mount as well as Sony E mount, which is the version I've got today. I'm going to be testing it on my Sony a7R4. And it's designed to work on full frame cameras, but you can also put it on an APS-C camera as well. And the equivalent focal length with a 1.5 times crop is 300mm, which actually makes this lens even more useful for sports and wildlife photography. Now, as you can see by the side of the lens, you've got a lot of switches, so it's great for customizing it depending on the different environments you might be shooting in. You've got an autofocus to manual focus switch, you've also got a focus limiter switch, you've got an image stabilization switch with 2 modes. Mode 1 is for more general use, where mode 2 is better for panning and tracking, again great for sports photography, as well as you've also got a custom switch as well, which again you can set with inside your camera. And then right underneath that, you've got a small click switch, and you might be wondering what that's for. Well, actually, it's all for the aperturing. You see, this has got a really useful feature, allowing you to change the aperture directly on the lens. You can have it clicking, as it clicks every third of a stop, but if you're maybe more of a video shooter, you can actually switch the clicks off, which means it is nice and smooth to use, and I really like that feature from Sigma. You've also got an A, which means you can change the actual aperture from the camera. You can also lock it as well. You've got a small little lock switch on the side here, so you completely lock the aperturing if it's not something that you particularly like shooting with. And then right above that, you've got yourself a focus ring, which is electronically coupled to the focus motor. And it's really smooth with a satisfying amount of friction to it, making this lens great when you want to use it in manual focus. And then right above that, you've got some autofocus lock buttons, which means when you go ahead and press it, it will automatically lock the focus to whatever you were focusing on at that point. Now, due to the size of the lens, it also comes with a tripod collar. It is removable, or you're gonna have to bring a set of Allen keys to actually remove it. And it's also got a built-in Arca Swiss plate to it, which is great for people like me that often leave their tripod plate at home. You've also got a really nice feature of it clicking at every 90 degrees, which is great when you have this lens on a tripod and you want to switch from portrait to landscape orientation. Now, as you can imagine, because this lens is a 200mm prime lens, it does have quite a complicated optical formula, coming in with 19 elements in 14 groups, and these lens elements are massive, making this lens really heavy, coming in around 1.82 kilograms or just over 4 pounds. where if we compared it to the Sigma 70-200mm f2.8, that lens there comes in around 1.34 kilograms, or just under 3 pounds. So it's around 1 pound heavier versus a standard 70-200mm. But if we compared it to Canon's 200mm prime lens, the f2, that lens there was well over 2 kilograms. So this is by far the lightest 200mm prime lens currently on the market. Although it definitely isn't going to win any awards for being the lightest lens in your camera bag. This lens also has a massive filter thread as well. Sigma, for some bizarre reason, haven't decided to go in for a drop-in filter like the 300-600mm, which I reviewed earlier this year. They've gone for a standard filter, which is 105mm, which had a big, or at least I had a big problem using this lens for video. I don't own a 105mm neutral density filter, which was very annoying for me. So if you are someone that's maybe wanting to use filters with this lens, just bear in mind that a 105mm filter thread is a very expensive filter to buy and very difficult to find. Not many camera shops stock 105mm filters. Now inside the box you do get yourself a lens pouch, which is really nice if you're wanting to travel with this lens and not have it in your camera bag due to the overall size of this lens, as well as it also comes with a lens hood. Now this is a metal lens hood and it has a nice rubberized ends so it doesn't end up getting scratched. And overall, the build quality of this lens is some of the best that I've seen from Sigma. And it's on par, if not better, than a lot of first-party lenses that I've reviewed on this channel. Now, 200mm is a very useful focal length for a wide variety of different types of photography. It's going to be really good for wildlife, but I think this lens has been specifically designed for sports photographers, both indoor and outdoor. But what makes this lens truly special is not the focal length, it's going to be the aperture. f2 is an amazing aperture at 200mm. It's going to give you two major benefits over a premium zoom lens. It's going to be really good in low light, being one stop brighter than a standard 70-200mm, and it's also going to create a beautiful shallow depth of field that will be amazing to separate your foreground and background. Now I use this lens for sports photography and I actually took it to a surfing event in Bristol and I really liked a lot of the photos. The separation at this distance wasn't majorly noticeable, but you could definitely see the difference if you compared f2 to f2.8, and I really liked this lens for it. It was a fairly overcast day, it wasn't very bright, but I'll still be able to shoot at very, very fast shutter speeds, like 3,200th of a second, making sure that every single photo was absolutely pin sharp. Yes, you would be able to get roughly the same from a 70-200mm, but you'd have to shoot at double the ISO to get the same shutter speed, making this lens an amazing low light performance lens, and some of the best I've seen from a dedicated sports lens. But how well does this lens perform optically, especially versus a 70-200mm? Well, let's have a look at a few graph images. Now to really put this lens through its paces, I'm going to be testing it on this. This is my Sony a7R4 with an incredibly demanding 61 megapixel full frame sensor. Okay, so we have a look at sharpness first. If we go ahead and zoom in right to the center, wide open at f2, we can see we're getting pin sharp images. This is really sharp wide open at f2. But let's really put the lens to the test and zoom into the corners. And actually, the corners are almost as sharp. There's a little bit of lacking in contrast, and I'd say there's a smidge more chromatic aberration, but it's very impressive wide open. If we step down to f2.8, f4, f5.6, all the way to f8, where this lens is truly sharp. Although it does get a little bit softer at f11, f16, and then at its narrowest aperture, f22, it does get a little bit softer. But that's just due to diffraction, which is definitely more noticeable on higher resolution megapixel cameras. Now, when buying a telephoto prime lens, one thing you definitely want to look out for is when it comes to flaring. With a giant bright element like this, you can get odd flaring artifacts. So let's see how well this lens performs when it comes to flaring. Well, actually, it's a pretty average score. You can see there's definitely a reduction in contrast and there's small flaring elements that you can see, but they're definitely not majorly distracting. So I would highly recommend using a lens hood with this lens, especially if you're pointing it towards any bright lights. Next up, let's have a look at distortion and vignetting, and this lens actually doesn't have much. Sure, there's a mild amount of pincushion distortion, but But I can see a lot of portrait photographers liking this lens for that, making your subjects look just a little bit thinner, as well as a small amount of vignetting, although that completely disappears if you step down to f2.8 and then f4, it's completely gone. So for distortion and vignetting, it's a very good score, especially versus a 70-200mm, which will have a lot more distortion both at 70 and 200mm. And with a minimum focus distance of just 1.7 meters, meaning it's got a maximum reproduction ratio of just 0.13, this is below average for a 200mm, although a 70-200mm at 200mm does have a very similar minimum focus distance, although you can get a lot closer when you zoom into 70mm instead. Again, that lens is just a little bit more versatile. Now, close-up image quality is very good, very sharp in the center, wide open at f2, and we can improve that if we step down to f2.8, f4, f5.6, and then all the way to f8, where you're getting razor sharpness. So personally, I probably wouldn't buy this lens for macro. So as you can see, this lens has really good optical performance and one of the sharpest lenses at 200mm I think I've ever reviewed on this channel. But there's one feature I think that Sigma have messed up on, and that is compatibility. It's not compatible with either the 1.4 or 2x teleconverter, which in my opinion is a little bit disappointing. This lens has almost been perfectly designed for teleconverters in mind. You think 200mm with a 2x gets you 400mm, and with a nice bright aperture of f2, you could still shoot at fairly fast shutter speeds with a teleconverter, but Sigma haven't made it compatible, which in my opinion is a little bit disappointing and might put people off buying this lens over another lens that is compatible. Now, if you want to have a closer look at some of the sample photos that I've taken in this review, head over to the link in the description where you can download all of the sample photos that you've seen in this review so you can pixel peep as much as you want. Now, because of this lens is part of Sigma's sports series of lenses, it has some of the best autofocus performance money can buy. And especially for sports photography, you will not be disappointed. I found that I almost nailed focus every single time, even when subjects were heading directly towards me, which was really nice to see from a 200mm prime lens. I thought this lens might have slightly slower autofocus versus a zoom, but actually I would say it's actually faster than any zoom lens that I have used, which was really nice to see. And for subject tracking on modern mirrorless cameras, this lens is almost perfect for it. Another great feature is it also has optical stabilization, which makes this lens really useful to use. When you're panning and tracking, it can sometimes be very difficult to find your subject, so being able to choose between mode 1 and mode 2 and having very reliable optical stabilization means you can shoot at slightly slower shutter speeds if you need to, but also for video, you're going to get a lot more stable footage. Here is with the optical stabilization turned off and then turned on, and you can see it makes a big difference. And for 200mm, that's really nice to see that they've added both of these functionalities. And for sports photography, this is going to be one of the best lenses you can buy, and I do think it would be better than a 70-200mm at 200mm. So, overall, what do I think of this lens after using it for 2 weeks in a variety of different environments? I took it to a wedding, and of course I took it to the Wave in Bristol to do a little bit of sports photography. But actually, I was really impressed by the overall optical performance, better in almost every single way than a 70-200mm. But I've still got the question in my head, is it worth buying over a 70-200mm? Well, in my opinion, for around 80-90% of photographers, I'd probably say no. The issue is, it's just not versatile enough. 200mm is a very useful focal length, but you know what's more useful? 70-200mm. That versatile focal range is great for a wide variety of different types of photography, not just for sports and wildlife. Where this lens here can be quite restricting. Yes, I got some amazing images that are far sharper than any zoom lens you could offer. But are your clients going to notice that? Now, on this camera here, you could really see the detail. If we take this photo here and zoom in, you can see just the individual little specks of water. And I don't think you'd get that same resolution on a 70-200mm. But again, you need to ask yourself the question, are your clients really going to notice that? Now, I think this lens would be a little bit more palatable if it was a little bit cheaper. £3,000 is a lot of money to spend on just one lens, especially a lens that has a very similar focal length to a lens that's just half of the price. Again, you're not going to get the same image quality, but are you really going to notice it? So I think this lens is perfect for people that shoot indoor sport and sports photography specifically. If you are a dedicated sports photographer and you'll be able to utilize what the unique features of this lens, then I think it's going to be great for you. But otherwise, I think a lot of photographers are going to be a lot happier with a 70 to 200mm. But of course, write down in the comments below, what would you prefer? Would you prefer a 70 to 200mm or a 200mm prime lens with far better optical quality? Make sure to write it down in the comments below. And with an overall score of 39 out of 50, this is a recommended lens to have in your camera bag. I just want to say thank you for Sigma for sending me this for 2 weeks for review, but as always, my reviews are always independent. Thank you to all of my YouTube members that are currently supporting the channel. If you guys want to support the channel and get some awesome perks, including free Lightroom presets and get to watch my videos before they go live, make sure to go ahead to the link in the description. I've been James for Photo Fever, and I'll catch you guys next week.